Bible study. I'm Patty Baker. Glad that you could join in at a time that's convenient for you. We are on YouTube and also over on Facebook. I hope that you'll join us at one of those two social media platforms. We take a look each week at the ancient texts that have been bound together, what we know commonly as the Bible. I believe it still speaks life, gives wisdom, and helps us to navigate this ever-changing world. So I hope that as we invite the Holy Spirit to come and fill us fresh with understanding, help us in the practical teaching today, that you will give a listen in to see how this lesson can impact your daily life. Let's give a quick review of where we were last study. We're working through these last couple of chapters of Acts. We've been studying the life of Paul for probably a little over a year now. So go back through and take a look at the other studies that we have if you're interested in more about his life. Right now, King Agrippa and his sister Bernice have come to visit Governor Festus to welcome him in his new position as Roman governor. Let me tell you a little bit about King Agrippa. He has religious insight because he and cultural understanding of the Jews. It is a royal advisory role. He understands the Jewish customs. He has full knowledge of the Torah, the first 5 books of what we know as the Bible. He understands the scrolls from the prophets, Jeremiah and so forth. So he's not the highest authority in the land, but he has influence over Jewish religious matters. So political position, it's religious. And Governor Festus has legal authority under Roman political law. He is a decision maker and he's responsible for order, justice, taxes, political stability. And he has the legal authority at this time to keep, release, or send prisoners to Rome. These two gentlemen are overseeing the area where Jerusalem is located. So he did not understand the Jewish theology, the Jewish arguments between the Sadducees and Pharisees. He didn't really understand all of the customs. So during the time that King Agrippa and his sister Bernice are staying with Governor Festus, Festus brings up the fact that he's got Paul sitting in jail and that the previous governor, Governor Felix, had put him in jail. And now Festus is bringing up Paul, because he's there for religious reasons, to King Agrippa to kind of get some insight here on maybe some backstory or some religious understanding about this whole story about Paul. And so Festus is explaining that the Jewish leaders had accused Paul fiercely, but offered no proof of anything that they were accusing Paul of. There were only disputes about religion. And Paul's claim that about Jesus and Jesus's life. So Festus admits, hey, I don't have any valid charges against this dude, but I'm going to send him to Caesar. And that's what this dude Paul wants. But I've got to send a letter along with him to say why to Caesar. And I don't have a good reason. So Festus is hoping that Agrippa can help him determine what to write in the official report when he sends him over to Caesar. Caesar Nero. Now, this is the supreme ruler of the Roman Empire at the time. It's the highest political, military, and judicial authority. Caesar is a a title that's used for this position, just like in the United States, we use the word president. And Caesar Nero is in power at the time. No one can overrule him in the Roman Empire, and he rules over all of the provinces and territories, all of the kings, such as King Agrippa, and all of the governors, such as Governor Festus. So we were finishing up Acts 25 and 26, where Caesar Nero is well and in power, and Agrippa is now visiting Festus as Festus has just become governor. And once Festus tells Agrippa what's going on, Agrippa's kind of interested. He's like, yeah, I really want to hear this dude. I want to hear what Paul's got to say about him. So he's interested, and Festus agrees to bring Paul out to Agrippa to hear him personally, right? Straight from the horse's mouth, if you will. So the governor sets up this formal hearing, not only for King Agrippa and his sister, but also for all of the military and other political and authorities to come and hear what Paul has to say in front of Agrippa. So that's what we're looking at today. They're dressed. Of course, they're very important people. They're coming into this area. Agrippa, Bernice, the army leaders, and all of the important men of Caesarea. So they went into what is known as the judgment room, and then Festus ordered the soldiers to bring in Paul. So today, Paul is standing before Agrippa, Bernice, Festus, and military leaders and other important governmental leaders in the Caesarea area. And this is Paul's fullest testimony that we're going to hear from him. It is the most detailed about where he's been, his calling, and his mission. And he explains who he was, what happened to him, and why he's on trial. And Agrippa is listening pretty closely because he's interested. And Festus, we'll see what he does in the middle of Paul's testimony. We're going to be reading through Acts, and this is a good bit of text, but it's a long testimony. So let's dive in. We're going to read Acts 26, 1 through 32. I hope that you will take some time and read it in a I want to say translation, in a translation that is easy for you to read. If you're studying it, then I recommend that you put out, several different versions and go over to the Blue Letter Bible. It's really good in blueletterbible.org. They do a really good job of taking each word, and it's an online concordance, putting those words through from the Hebrew, the Greek, and giving you synonyms and other places in the Bible where each word is located so that you can study not only the context and the culture, but what those words meant during that time so that you can have a better understanding for the ancient texts that we're reading. Let's begin. I'm reading out of the ICB. It is the International Children's Bible. I like to read through different versions. It helps us to better understand. I'm just using this one today. There's no particular reason that I picked it. Agrippa said to Paul, "You may now speak to defend yourself." We're in a formal judgment room. Everybody's dressed to the nines here in all of their political garb. Then Paul raised his hand and he began to speak. And he said, "King Agrippa, I will answer all the charges that the Jews make against me. I think it is a blessing that I can stand before you today." We see here that Paul's calling places him before kings. And although it does not shield him from suffering. He's been in jail now for 2-3 years for something he didn't do. He's been falsely accused of. So our faith, our purpose, our passion, our values, our calling may put us in front of audiences that will advance us through endurance, not necessarily through exemption or exception. I read on in the text. I am very happy to talk to you, Paul says, because you know so much about all the Jewish customs and the things that the Jews argue about. Please listen to me patiently. All the Jews know about my whole life. So Paul anchors his defense here in personal transformation instead of some theological debate. He said, you understand these Jewish customs. You know the arguments that we have within the religion. And I'm not going to stand up here and give you some debate. But what I am going to share with you is my life, right? And we will see that his life gives credibility to the message that he's proclaiming. And I think for us today, truth carries weight when it's demonstrated, not just when it's described. Actions speak louder than words. Verbal assurance does not give us anything more than verbal assurance. That's it. Until that verbal assurance shifts into action, it's just an assurance. And here we see that truth carries weight when it's demonstrated, which is why testimony is so powerful, because it's not about what we think or what we're describing or some sort of debate that we're coming up with. This is my life story, and I can't make it up. It is what it is, right? And that's what Paul's saying here. Let's read on. Paul continues. They know the way I lived from the beginning in my own country. He's from Turkey. And later in Jerusalem, because when he became 12, 14 or so, his parents sent him to Jerusalem to study under the great Jewish scholars. So he was born in a Jewish family in what we know now as modern day Turkey. They sent him over to Israel, to Jerusalem specifically, so that he could be at the Holy Temple and learn the Jewish religion customs from there. They have known me for a long time, and if they want to, they can tell you that I was a good Pharisee. Now that's a distinction, because Pharisees and Sadducees, as we've talked about in previous studies, have different understandings, they're in different camps theologically with some of the Jewish customs. And so although they stand together in what is known as the Sanhedrin, which is a group of religious leaders, they are separated by their religious views, Pharisees and Sadducees. So right now, Paul is saying, I'm a Pharisee, knowing that the king understands that whether you say I'm a Democrat or a Republican, for example, then you probably know what their views are. And so he's saying here, I'm a Pharisee. And the Pharisees obey the laws of the Jewish religion more carefully than any other group of Jewish people. And now I am on trial because I hope for the promise that God made to our ancestors. This is the promise of the 12 tribes of our people who hope to receive. For this hope, the Jews serve God day and night. My king, the Jews have accused me because I hope for the same promise. Why do any of you people think it is impossible for God to raise people from death? I too thought I ought to do many things against the Jesus of Nazareth. And in Jerusalem, I did many things against God's people. The leading priests gave me the power to put many of them in jail. When they were being killed, I agreed that it was a good thing. And in every synagogue, I often punished them. I tried to make them say evil things against Jesus. And I was so angry against them that I even went to other cities to find them and punish them. For us today, in looking at Paul's life, I think that we can agree that we can be deeply zealous about a thought or a value or a belief and still lack wisdom about what we're defending. Passion does not guarantee that we are aligned with truth. I think it's important when we come with beliefs that we also understand that it's through the lens of our experience and understanding and teachings, and those things may be limited. So when you come to the table to meet with people, make sure that there's an understanding that you may lack some wisdom in what you're trying to defend. Listen to what other people have to say, and then stand firm in what you know to be true. Not what you think to be true, but what you know to be true. And most oftentimes that's based on your experience. I read on. One time, the leading priests gave me permission and the power to go to Damascus. And on the way there at noon, I saw the light of heaven. There was a light that was brighter than the sun. It flashed all around me and the men who were traveling with me. We all fell to the ground. And then I heard the voice speaking to me in a Jewish language. And the voice said, "Saul, Saul, why are you doing things against me? You are only hurting yourself by fighting me." And I said, "Who are you, Lord?" And the Lord said, "I am the one you are trying to hurt. Stand up. I have chosen you to be my servant. You will be my witness. You will tell people the things that you have seen and the things that I will show you. This is why I have come to you today. I will not let your own people hurt you. And I will keep you safe from the non-Jewish people too. These are the people I am sending you to. I send you to open their eyes that they may turn away from darkness to the light. I send you that they may turn away from the power of Satan and turn to God. Then their sins can be forgiven and they can have a place with those people who have been made holy by believing in me. Revelation creates responsibility. Once we have an understanding of something, it creates a responsibility. Paul has shown that here in his testimony that he has a new perspective. He had an enlightenment encounter that he's describing here, and he chose to live in alignment with that enlightenment. Paul's experience required an inward reckoning and an outward change. So transformation is not emotional or momentary. It is lived out over time. So whether you're in relationships, in your workplace, in your community, in the school system, hospitals, whatever area of influence you're in, when you receive revelation about something, now it creates responsibility. Ignorance can be blind. But now with revelation, what is your responsibility to your knowing now? And sometimes there's a reckoning that you have to do inside to go, wow, now I'm seeing this in my relationship. What does this look like for me now? This is a new revelation. What is my responsibility in knowing this now? that I didn't know before in this relationship, in my job, in my community, and so forth. So that transformation is not something, once you've reckoned with the information that you have, the revelation that you have, and the understanding of the responsibility, which is maybe to do nothing, maybe to inform, maybe to act upon, maybe to use your influence for this situation. Whatever you decide, that is not something emotional that happens, or it's not momentary. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. This is something that you have to reckon with before the great Creator, before the Holy Spirit, to guide you, to seek wisdom and understanding internally. Because if you're emotionally driven, you're not going to get too far. That's just for the moment. That's going to die. It's got to be lived out over time. And this is what Paul's life, he's setting this up, is saying, and this has been lived out over time because this has been what I've been doing. Let's read on. Paul continues. King Agrippa, after I had this vision from heaven, I obeyed it. He had the revelation. Now he's accepted the responsibility from that revelation, and he's going to walk that out. He continues. I began telling people that they should change their hearts and lives and turn to God. I told them to do things to show that they really had changed. I told the first to those in Damascus, then in Jerusalem, and in every part of Judea, and also to the non-Jewish people. This is why the Jews took me and were trying to kill me in the temple. But God helped me and is still helping me today. And with God's help, I'm standing here today and telling all people that I have seen. But I am saying nothing new. I am saying what Moses and the prophets said would happen and come to fruition, right? They said that the Christ would die and be the first to rise from death. They said that the Christ would bring light to the Jewish and non-Jewish people. Paul's testimony, as he is laying it out, is logical, it's coherent, and it's grounded in shared beliefs. He's meeting King Agrippa with shared beliefs about what Moses said, about what the prophets said. He's like, you know this. You're a Jew. You understand the Jewish customs. And so I believe those things too. And if you and I both believe those things, then we have a shared belief. So why is it so hard for everybody to be against me when I'm believing what had been prophesied? So Christianity here is presented as a reasonable fulfillment of God's promise, not a departure from that. And that's what Paul's testimony here is about. Paul continues in talking this through, but here comes Festus. While Paul was saying these things to defend himself, Festus said loudly, Paul, you are out of your mind. Too much study has driven you crazy. And Paul said, most excellent Festus, I am not crazy. My words are true. They are not the words of a foolish man. King Agrippa knows about all these things. I can speak freely to him. I know that he has heard about all of these things. They did not just happen off in a corner somewhere. King Agrippa, do you believe what the prophets wrote? I know you believe. King Agrippa then said to Paul, do you think that you can persuade me to become a Christian in such a short time? And Paul said, whether in a short time or in a long time, I pray to God that not only you, but every person here listening to me today would be saved and be like me. Except for these chains that I have. Knowledge of the scriptures doesn't guarantee surrender to it. Agrippa understands full well that what the prophets had prophesied and what Moses had written and the promises that were laid out by Jeremiah and Isaiah, the main prophets and the lesser known prophets. He understood the Jewish hope. And yet he stopped short of commitment. Because, see, revelation brings a reckoning internally that then leads to a choice and responsibility. Being informed is not the same as being persuaded or being changed. You can persuade people as much as you want. You can inform them as much as you want. But that doesn't mean that people are going to change or people are going to be persuaded. So think about that. Just because you believe it and you've got a testimony to back it up doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree with you. Doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that other people, based upon their experiences, are going to follow suit with you. Your message may invite a response, but it's not in a place of neutrality. So Paul presses Agrippa personally. That's bold. The question is not whether the message is interesting or reasonable at this point, but whether it can be acted upon. Almost is still not obedience. And we see that here with King Agrippa. I see what you're saying up to this point, but I can't go any farther with you here. I read on. Then King Agrippa, Governor Festus, King Agrippa's sister Bernice, and all the people sitting with them stood up and left the room. They were talking to each other, and they said, "There's no reason why this man should die or be put in jail." And Agrippa said to Festus, "We could let this man go free, but he has asked Caesar to hear his case." As we end here for the study for today, I really want to dive into the wisdom behind what King Agrippa has recommended to Governor Festus here. It's good. It's actually wise for King Agrippa to advise Festus to send Paul to Rome for several important reasons, both politically, religiously, and spiritually. That decision, there's no reason for him to be in jail. He's done nothing wrong. He's been sitting there for 3 years. And he was given the choice by Festus to go back to Jerusalem to be put on trial with the Jews. Paul already knew what was going to happen there. He's going to die. They'll stone him. So his best option, because he is a Roman, is to go before Caesar. And he, as a Roman citizen, has every right to ask for that. But now Festus is like, what do I give as the reason? Because there's no good reason here. And King Agrippa said, well, I'll hear what he's got to say. And now King Agrippa agrees. Yeah, there's no good reason, but he has to go. So clearly, Agrippa understood the Jewish law. And he listened pretty carefully to Paul's defense. But he also recognized that Paul hadn't done anything that was deserving of death or even imprisonment. So by advising that Paul be sent to Rome, Agrippa helped prevent any politically motivated conviction of Paul driven by these local religious leaders without any evidence. Also, this decision removed Festus from any sort of political bind. See, because Festus, he's new to this province and he's already under pressure because the Jews already came to him and said, hey, bring him down here, because they were hoping to kill Paul on the way. Then the Jewish authorities would be like, oh, I guess we can't do anything now because somebody killed him. So if Festus released Paul, he risked the unrest of the Jewish religious people and the authority in that area. And if he condemned Paul, he'd be punishing an innocent Roman citizen. Not good either. So sending Paul to Rome kept Festus's hands clean politically. And it shifted that responsibility to the proper authority because Paul asked to go to Caesar. And that preserved Festus's political standing. Very smart move for a king to advise this governor. The last thing here, why this is a wise decision, is that it honors Paul's right as a Roman citizen. He wanted to formally appeal to Caesar. And once that appeal was made, it had to be respected because he's a Roman citizen. And Agrippa's advice acknowledged that rule of law, and it affirmed that Paul deserved a fair hearing at the highest level in Rome. I said that this decision was made, this advice that the king is given to the governor is wise for political, religious, and also spiritual. Unbeknownst to King Agrippa, the Spirit had come to Paul in a vision and said, hey, you are going to go to Rome and share the good news that people don't have to go to the synagogue to get rid of sin, and they don't have to go and pay homage to me at the inner courts when they can come to me directly, spirit to spirit. So God's purpose is being advanced here unbeknownst to the king or the governor, only Paul. So from a theological perspective, the decision aligned with God's plan, from a, not theological, but from a spiritual perspective. And Paul was not escaping danger. Trust me when I tell you, he eventually dies. I'll tell you how it ends, spoiler alert. But he was also positioned to speak in the center of the empire in Rome. And this is what got him there. Suffering sometimes takes us to places where we're actually supposed to be. It's a part of life. Nobody gets out of here alive. None of us. And some of us will suffer more than others in the process based upon our choices and our calling. So what looked like political maneuvering here was actually a divine placement. I also think that Agrippa's conclusion and advice made something pretty clear here. Christianity was not a criminal threat. Religious threat, yes. Political threat, yes. But it was not a criminal threat that deserved any sort of criminal punishment. And by sending Paul to Rome with no real charges, the case itself became a testimony that was not rebellion, but truth. So Agrippa's advice was good because it upheld justice, it reduced the political violence, and it respected Roman law. And unintentionally, unbeknownst to everyone here except for Paul, this was God's plan and purpose for Paul to go to Rome, to also give his testimony there. Just to wrap this up, not every conflict needs to be solved at the same level it started. Not every conflict needs to be solved at the same level it started. Paul was stuck in a local political system that was emotionally charged, pressured by religious system. It was biased, it was unsafe, and moving the situation to Rome protected him rather than avoiding I would say, rather than avoiding the imminent, he's there, which is death. It protected his life and gave him yet just another place and platform to state his case. This issue didn't start at Rome. It started in the local arena, but it didn't need to stay there. I think if a situation keeps cycling with the same people, the same emotions, the same outcomes, wisdom may mean changing the level or the environment, not pushing harder. I'm thinking right now in areas of relationships. We keep cycling around and circling around the same issues in our relationships with the same people, the same emotions, the same outcomes. Nothing's working. Wisdom means changing the level or changing the environment. And that may mean different things happening, for example, within the household, or it may mean taking it outside to a therapist or someone else. Could be even a medical condition. You're cycling around the same problems and you're doing the same things. You're getting the same outcomes. Well, then wisdom says you're going to have to change something, because you can't keep doing the same thing, getting the same outcomes with the same people and the same emotion behind it. So maybe we ought to bring in a doctor or a specialist. Or maybe we need to think outside the box here and bring in someone else. We can't just keep pushing harder because we've been doing that and it doesn't work. Sometimes also distance is clarity. Wisdom knows when to escalate. Wisdom knows when to step back. King Agrippa didn't say Paul was guilty or innocent in public. He said it privately, but he didn't say it in public. He recognized that the situation required a higher authority and a much cleaner process. So when emotions run high in the workplace, the community, in your home, in various relationships, don't try to resolve everything in the heat of the moment. Pause. Thoughtfully determine what needs to happen next. And that means taking a step back until the right condition exists. Let time breathe and give it some distance. And this applies to family, to work, to church, close relationships, your community connections. You can be right and still need protection. That's happened to me time and time and time again when I've been falsely accused, whether it be in the workplace or in other arenas where I'm right, but I still need an attorney to protect me in court because I have false accusations coming against me. Paul was innocent, but he was articulate and he was faithful. And I say the same. It is still needed to leave, whether you're going to leave a situation or you're going to survive it. You have got to remain innocent, hold truth, articulate well what your truth is, and be faithful in the process. Being right does not obligate you to stay exposed to pressure, manipulation, or emotional exhaustion. Boundaries are not a lack of faith. They are stewardship for you. So being right doesn't obligate you to stay exposed to the pressure or be manipulated or become emotionally exhausted. God can work through delays and God can work through detours. And what may look like legal limbo here or being in limbo in our lives is actually divine positioning. Rome wasn't a setback. It was the mission field. So when life moves slower than we want it to, or differently than we want it to, or than we've planned, it may be relocation rather than rejection. And ask not why this is happening, but ask, where might this be taking me? When situations come up in your life that you didn't expect, that's moving way differently or way slower than what you had planned, ask, where might this be taking me? Don't get stuck in the, why is this happening to me? Because now you're going to spiral and cycle around the same emotions with the same outcomes with the same people. Where is this taking me? Insight does not equal obedience. We saw that with the king. Agrippa understood Paul and still stopped short of wanting to commit to Paul's truth of the Christian faith. I hope that these lessons will help you as you are managing your life situations. And as we see next week what is going to happen with Paul as he heads off to Rome, will be in Acts 27. If you want to get a head start, read the chapter in a version that you prefer, and then join me back here. We drop a new video each Thursday, and I would love to be able to connect with you then.